hopefully you'll learn something. Hopefully you'll have some questions. Many of you probably have a question of like, okay, who's this Jeff guy? Okay, so I'm going to tell you, because I think it's really important that you understand that I have two passions in life. Okay, one of them is water, which is why I come here, and my other passion is running in the mountains. Okay? And every day I have a mantra that I share with my children and my close friends. Okay? So you'll see my mantra, and there's three things. Okay? Every day, touch nature, drink water, and be kind. So if you don't remember anything, you can say, oh, I remember Jeff and his mantra, touch nature, drink water, and be kind. Okay? Okay, I have a friend. His name is Jim Farrell, and earlier this year he shared this picture. So these next two slides have really nothing to do with my talk specifically. It's just how we think and our perception and our willingness to be open to learning. Okay? So I have this picture up here. It's a two-dimensional world. We have a fisherman, we got a person at a desk, we got fish, we have a guy at a desk, and they all are in their own little world. The fisherman, he has no idea about the people in the two homes and what they're doing or what they're thinking. So they're trapped in this two-dimensional world. And sometimes we can be trapped like these people, unless we dimensionalize our world. And that is seeing our world through the eyes of other people. Okay? And how important that is. Jim shared this quote, and I'm going to share it with you, and that is, insisting on the primacy of our own views will always condemn us. Okay? And so, just like we have two eyes that allow us to actually have a depth perception, if we dimensionalize our world and engage with people, especially with people that have a completely different view of the world than us, that makes us a better person. Okay? So that's the first slide. Okay? Second slide. How many of you know, do you know what this picture is of? Do you know what that is? It's a sponge. Okay? I'm reading Adam Grant's latest book that just came out a week or two ago, and he said a couple of things that were really important to me about what our absorption capacity is, just like a sponge. So I put up here two different points. How do you acquire information? Do you react to it, or do you proactively seek knowledge and skills and perspectives? And then the second is, what's your goal? Is your goal is to feed your ego? Or is your goal to fueling your growth? Okay? And both of those concepts Adam talks about in his book, Hidden Potential. It's a great book, okay? So again, these two slides have nothing to do with what I'm talking about, only in the sense of how important it is for you to be open and to grow and to listen to others. But I'm convinced, after being here all of these years, if you're here, you are not feeding your ego, you are fueling your growth. I'm convinced of that because of the caliber of people that come here and want to learn about our water challenges. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about AI. Okay? And there's certainly some of you that know and incorporate AI way more than me. And there's probably a few of you, maybe one of you, that knows less about AI than I do. Okay? But Hopefully, in the next 25 minutes, you will recognize how AI is already in your world and what the potential it might be in solving our water challenges. So I have up here some different AI applications that are used. Okay, so most of you have probably used or heard of ChatGPT. Okay. But there are lots of other ones. Google has one, Microsoft has one. And I found out this past week there's actually a derivative of ChatGPT called CatGPT. It's actually a real thing that you can ask questions, and the answers that you get back are basically if a cat responded to you. I had no idea. Okay? But I asked ChatGPT, okay, ChatGPT, how are we going to solve our water problems here in Utah? Okay? And here's what ChatGPT said. It said, establish water conservation programs. Doing that. Efficient irrigation practices. That's getting better. Infrastructure investments. Yes, thank goodness for ARPA and all the money that we're putting into infrastructure. That's happening. Reuse, recycle. That is also happening. And there are cities and entities here within our valley that are directly engaged in that. Policy and regulation, certainly. We've seen what our legislature has done the last few years. Educational outreach, all you have to do is go out here and visit with these fine people to understand that. Research and innovation, same. Collaboration and drought preparedness. We're checking all the boxes, in my opinion. And I thought, as I was preparing this presentation, I thought, we're done. We have figured it out. Okay, we've solved it. But clearly, we haven't, because that's why we're here. And that's why we're trying to work on this problem. Okay? Okay. Several years ago, at this conference, this quote was shared. And as I was going through my pictures, I was like, oh, I'm going to share it again. It's been long enough that probably the majority don't remember this presentation. Okay? But this is a quote. I find that the Utah Valley sediments crowded up to their utmost capacity, land and water all appropriated, and our young people, as they marry off, have no place to settle near home. The resources of the people are exhausted, unless they go into manufacturing. And I'm not really sure what that part was for, but it's all done, okay? When was this quote? What year? Anybody have any idea? 1885. 1885, when there was about 20,000 people here in the state of Utah. I thought that was hilarious, because we're talking about now tremendous growth. Not 20,000, we're talking about doubling, more or less, our population here in Utah. So we saw earlier this morning these similar graphs. Okay, so it's important to recognize that our growth is really increasing at, maybe some would say at an alarming rate, but it is increasing. People want to live here in Utah. And it's interesting to know, this is about 10 years old, but it's interesting to know that 10 years ago, the GOA office in DC did a study across all the states in the country saying, okay, how prepared is your state for resiliency when it comes to supplying water to the people of your state? And you can see on here, Utah is one of the few white-colored states which basically said none of our water supply entities are really at risk. or we have a pretty good plan. Which, I don't want to argue and say, oh, that's really not the case today, because I think they are in a lot of places. But the point that I wanted to bring with this particular slide is that the people of Utah, the citizens and the water providers and our legislatures have been actively involved in making sure that we have our water. Okay? So let's look, and again, this is a few years outdated. I think this is probably maybe 5 years old or so. But the gist of the context here is to say we're doing okay, water, meeting our demands, but at the growth, even if we conserve, this blue line is if we conserve, which we have done a remarkable job the last 5-6 years, we still are going to be challenged if we're going to meet that population growth. That's the reality, and it's important to understand that we will be challenged here in the coming years if we don't figure out how we're going to manage our water. Okay, so those are kind of some background issues. Now, how does AI, artificial intelligence, how does that work into this? How does that help us? And so I reached out to a number of different colleagues across the country, both here in Utah and across the country, to get their perspective and how it's being used now. And then I have some personal implementations of it, okay? So I wrote down these 5 things here that AI can help us automate processes when it comes to water. It certainly can take all of the data that we are collecting second by second, minute by minute. We are collecting so much data, and it can take all of that data and analyze it in so many different forms and so many different ways that we can't even really think about it. Optimizing for decision making, certainly our modeling to predict future needs or future events, and then predictive capability. So these are some of the things where AI can help us with our water challenges. Okay? So one of my friends who's at Brigham Young University, Dr. Rob Sobey, he wrote a paper, and at the end of the presentation, I'll give you the link, but he wrote a paper earlier this year where he wanted to look at particularly the drinking water providers across the country and who's using or implementing or wanting to implement AI technology in their realm of providing clean water to people. So I have 4 different pictures here of how typically on a water supply standpoint, how we use AI and how it's being implemented. Certainly in leak detection, water treatment, water distribution, and then this little fancy thing is what we call digital twin, okay? Which is a growing function of taking everything of how a city or an entity operates and making a digital version of that, okay? Just as like you can see like some AI robot mimics some person and talks and like that, a digital twin would do the same thing for a city or a municipality or a county. And so he looked at the drinking water across the country. And this was pretty interesting. Again, he didn't survey everybody, but he surveyed dozens of entities across the country. And he found, or in his group, found this blue, they were actually people now that have implemented AI type efforts into their workflow. And even the people that don't, within 5 years, really want to. And then there was some like, no, we're not going to do that. But there was a growing group of people across the country that are wanting to implement or have already implemented AI in their water distribution. And as part of that research, this was some of the reasons or some of the outcomes of implementing AI. And I just listed them here. Save money, detect leaks, improve water quality, hydraulics, improve public perception. So lots of different reasons of why they're doing it. Okay? So that's pretty interesting. Great research. It's a great paper to help you understand if you're in the drinking water world. It's a good reference to kind of see what other people are doing. Again, I just kind of pulled out a few things just to share with you. Okay? Now, let's look at a large municipality. And I'm talking Los Angeles, Houston, New York, Atlanta. What are they doing? Because it's a huge effort to manage all of the water, whether it's water, drinking water or wastewater. It's a huge effort to take advantage of. And so there are companies, one of my good friends works directly with these large municipalities to provide AI technology. And when I talked to him, he said, there's really, a couple that come to mind, and that is water and wastewater treatment, optimizing the chemicals that are used to treat the water and to clean the water on the wastewater side, and then also this real-time forecasting, which is incredible science. I don't know if you've seen some of the work that's come out in the last couple of years, but the ability to understand and predict flooding and where it's going, particularly in areas like the Gulf, or in this case, this is the city of Houston. That is amazing, the AI implementation to understand real-time the flooding potential and where that's going and how to get rid of and try to reduce the effects. So that's on a large municipality. What about on something smaller like Utah scale? I've done a lot of work over the years with the city of Provo, so I talked to those folks and asked them, okay, how are you implementing or have implemented AI technology into your workflow? This is the water resource people, the public works folks, right? So I wrote down some of the things. So AMI, if you haven't heard of that, that is a pretty important term. That is the automatic metering infrastructure, okay? So if your community is not fully built out on AMI technology, you need to call your city council or your mayor and say, what's it going to take so that our community is fully 100% AMI capable, okay? And that's what I'm talking about there is it's real-time metering of both your inside and outside water, okay? Tracking the water within the entire water circle. SCADA, that's basically everything, how the city operates when wells pump or when we're sending water one way or another. It's all computerized and it goes to a central information and all that information gets captured. And so Provo has all of their system, SCADA enabled. It's all computerized. And modeling and other technologies. So we have done this locally here in our state. Okay, so this is a little personal one. I live in a town that got grants a few years ago to implement this AMI, this metering system throughout the entire community. So I have an app on my phone that I can see hour by hour what my water usage is inside my house and outside my house. Okay? So it tells me, I actually took some screenshots so you can go, oh, Jeff, that's a lot of water. So this one is kind of the main screen that kind of gives me over a week period of time how much water I used during that week. And the other really cool thing, in fact, I listened to a really cool podcast last night about this leak detection system and how AI uses that. And so my inside and outside is constantly monitoring for any kind of leaks. So if I have a toilet that gets stuck, I get a message that texts my phone and is like, you've got water that's running. If I'm watering a plant outside and I go to bed and I forget that I've left that hose on, I get a message that says, hey, I got a leak. I got water that's running. And you can see, this one is my outside watering. This was, I think I picked last year when we water twice a week. Well, we're supposed to in my community. Some people water more, but twice a week. And so you can see, Monday, Wednesday. Next week, Monday, Wednesday. And then you can see this is my inside, that you got a little bit of water in the morning and a little bit of water use in the evening. Okay? So it's a great thing. And if your community doesn't have this, I would call your city council member or your mayor and say, why don't we have this? What is it going to take to implement this in our city? One of my friends, Nathan, he's in the Division of Drinking Water, so maybe some of you know him. He's also working on his PhD, and he wrote a paper earlier this year, and it's great. It's all about residential irrigation. And some really cool things in there is that in his research, by monitoring and controlling your irrigation outside, whether it's this weather-based or a smart AI type application, we see anywhere from 15 to 40% reduction in water use, outside water use. The other thing that's really cool is, I don't know if anybody here is from Spanish Fork, but they implemented it citywide over the last couple of years, so that every single resident, and so far they've done 3,200 installations, and they have seen a 17% average water saving. So they basically, if you have a home and you have a sprinkler system, we will come and we will install this smart controller and we'll show you how to use it. Amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so how does that help? How does that apply to me? Okay, so a few years ago, I'm like, okay, I got to jump on this bandwagon. This is cool. Okay, and so I have, and I didn't, you can see that, I haven't fully implemented it because I don't have pictures of every single zone, but every zone in my outside irrigation, I can take a picture of that, what that zone is, and then I can for each zone, I can look at and say, okay, what is this? Is this grass? Is this shrubs? Is this trees? Is this flowers? And how am I irrigating it? And if you really want to geek out, there's all sorts of controls that you can specify, the root depth or all these other controls if you really want to implement it fully. But how does this apply to AI? Well, once you've set that up, then the AI, the artificial intelligence within that program detects and says, oh, too windy. I'm not watering. oh, it rained sufficiently yesterday or this morning, I don't need to water for the next 2 days. It knows exactly, based on the weather, what it needs to do. And even so, when we get toward the end of the season, it comes September, I start getting messages, oh, we've adjusted your irrigation based on the season. So this is a very cool technology. And again, I can tell you more about it, but this is how we save water. Okay? Okay. Now I know one person particularly here is not a big fan of cloud seeding. So I put this in here specifically because I talked to Jake, who is at the Division of Water Resources that oversees our cloud seeding program for the state of Utah. And we work also with the state of Idaho that has a much bigger cloud seeding program. But I'm like, okay, how do within your program, do you use machine learning or AI technology in your program? And so these are the things that I wrote down, that they use that information to influence their data, to influence their models. Okay? So it's mostly, and then try to optimize those models so that we can really understand if cloud seeding is efficient and if it's effective and how effective it is. Okay? So here are just some of the people that I talked to. Those are the 2 links for Rob and Nathan that you can get your phone out and you can take those. But hopefully you've learned a little bit about how AI is already helping us and already helping our cities and helping us improve our situation. Okay? Hopefully you were a sponge and that that this was insightful. You can scan this QR code and you can get this actual presentation if you want. Thank you for your attention.